Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. We welcome you to our Chaitanya Charitamrita class this morning. This morning we will be hearing and discussing from Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 3, verse number 15 and 16. The title of the chapter is The External Reasons for the Appearance of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This morning's class will be given by His Grace Balbhadra Prabhu from ISKCON Atlanta, who is also a disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, all glories to Prabhupada.
Thank you for your association and blessing this morning. So whenever you're ready, we can start the class, Prabhu.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhu, perfectly fine.
Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Yate Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desa Kadine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vas Adi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Haribo 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 Haribo. So we'll begin in just a second. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajakacarya Stutarasata Shishimad is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Adi Lila Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajakacarya Stutarasata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki, Navadip Dham Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki, Shri Gaur Nitai Ki, Shri Radha Surat Bihari Ki, Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ki, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. Hari Bo Garima. Hari Bo. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda. So we're reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, beginning with Adi Lila 3, verses 15, and then verse 16. Sakala jagate more kare vidhi bhakti vraja bhava paite nahi shakti. Sakala jagate more kare vidhi bhakti vraja bhava paite nahi shakti. Sakala jagate more kare vidhi bhakti vraja bhava paite nahi shakti. Anyone else want to sing the verse?
Hare Krishna. Sakal jagate more kare vidhi bhakti vraj bhav paite nahi shakti.
Very nice. Anyone else?
Sakala jagate more kare vidhi bhakti vraja bhava paite nahi shakti.
Thank you, Gurima. Haribo Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. Sakala, all jagate in the universe. More, to me, kare, they do. Vidi bhakti, regulative devotional service. Vidi bhakti, by regulative devotional service. Vraja bhava, the feelings of those in Vraja. Paite, to obtain. Nahi, not. Shakti, the power. Translation. Everywhere in the world, people worship me according to scriptural injunctions. But simply by following such regulative principles, one cannot attain the loving sentiments of the devotees in Brajabhumi. Text 16. Aishwarya Jnanete Shaba Jagat Mishrita Aishwarya Sitila Preme Nahi Mora Prita Aishwarya Jnanate Shaba Jagat Mishrita Aishwarya Shitila Preme Nahi Mora Prita Aishwarya Janate Saba Jagad Mishita Aishwarya Sitila Preme Nahi Mora Prita. So I'll just do the word for word in translation. Aishwarya Jnanete, with knowledge of the opulences, Sabha, all, Jagat, the world, Mishita, mixed, Aishwarya Shitila Preme, to love enfeebled by opulence. Nahi, there is not. Mora, my. Prita, attraction. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Purport. After his appearance, Lord Krishna thought that he had not distributed the transcendental personal dealings with his devotees in Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. One may understand the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the Vedic literatures and thus become a devotee of the Lord and worship him within the regulative principles described in the scriptures. But one will not know in this way how Krishna is served by the residents of Brajabhumi. One cannot understand the dealings of the Lord in Vrindavan simply by executing the ritualistic regulative principles mentioned in the scriptures. By following scriptural injunctions, one may enhance his appreciation for the glories of the Lord, but there is no chance for one to enter into personal dealings with him. Giving too much attention to understanding the exalted glories of the Lord reduces the chance of one's entering into personal loving affairs with the Lord. To teach the principles of such loving dealings, the Lord decided to appear as Lord Chaitanya. Om Agyanatimiranda Sajjananjanan Salakaya Chakshu Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swan Rupa Gadamaya Dadate Swabadante Kam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So when reading this purport, it appeared to me that the idea of simply focusing on the regulative principles is not enough in order to understand Krishna and his wonderful transcendental form and his wonderful pastimes and activities. But simultaneously, we cannot be negligent of the regulative process. So one might conclude or might observe and say, well, it seems to be a minimizing of the importance of the regulative principles. For instance, it says, one may understand the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the Vedic literatures and thus become a devotee of the Lord and worship him within the regulative principles described in the scriptures, but one will not know in this way how Krishna is served by the residents of Brajabhumi. So again, it's not contradictory, but it's a little bit challenging for us to understand this properly. So in the Nectar of Instruction, verse 2, Atyahara prayasyascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana sangaschalo yamcha Sadbhir bhaktir vinasyati. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. Number 1, eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. Number 2, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. Number 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. Number 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. And 5, associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, accepting some of the scriptural rules and regulations for immediate benefit, as utilitarians advocate, is called niyam agraha, and neglecting the rules and regulations of shastras, which are meant for spiritual development, is called niyama agraha. The word agraha means eagerness to accept, and agraha means failure to accept. By the addition of either of these 2 words to the word niyama, rules and regulations, the word niyamagraha is formed. Thus, niyamagraha has a twofold meaning that is understood according to the particular combination of words. Those interested in Krishna consciousness should not be eager to accept rules and regulations for economic advancement, yet they should very faithfully accept scriptural rules and regulations for the advancement of Krishna consciousness. They should strictly follow the regulative principles by avoiding illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication. So again, there's that balance between being too absorbed in, quote unquote, the rules and regulations and understanding the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of our process is love of Godhead. Prema Pum Artha Mahan. Pum meaning, Pum Artha means the supreme benefit. Artha means benefit. Religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation. So what is the highest benefit to be achieved by all of this activity? We've come to Krishna consciousness, and we come for various reasons, as it mentions in Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes we come for economic development, out of suffering, seeking knowledge. We might be wise. But what is the main purpose? We don't understand that when we first come. That's why regulative principles are important. In the process of regulative principles, there's rising early in the morning, chanting a fixed number of rounds. Of course, recommended to chant 16, but if some people have difficulty with that, please chant Hare Krishna as much as possible, at least in the beginning. Of course, when approaching initiation and after initiation, 16 rounds are mandatory. There are no adjustments there. One must commit to chanting 16 rounds. And then doing various services in the morning, pujas. If one is a Brahmana, he does puja. And then, as we're doing now, sitting together, hearing the glories of the Lord, either Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, sometimes Bhagavad Gita. So this is the process. And by doing that process, gradually we make advancement. Adal Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangota Bhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivritti Shat Tato Nishtha Ruchis Tata. And that's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Translation: in the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. So that's the first point. We have this initial desire to make spiritual progress, and we approach an institution such as our International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Then we have that desire, we come. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated, which is extremely important for us to remember. Persons who are spiritually elevated. Now, that's not to minimize devotees who are not as spiritually advanced, who are trying to practice Krishna consciousness. We can learn from anyone. I remember when I was just coming to the temple in the beginning of 1973, there was one bhakta who had come down, I believe, from Virginia. And he was a very sweet devotee. And I remember him telling me one afternoon, and it was just beautiful. He was sitting on the front porch of the temple. He had his tilak and dhoti and everything. And just so nice the way he said this. And he said like this. He said, it's so wonderful to come back to the temple in the evening. And I'm sure he was indicating coming back from Harinam or from Sankirtan. Take a shower, put on tilak, and chant Hare Krishna. And that stays in my mind almost 50 years later. That simple thing. Now, who was that from? Not the temple president, not a GBC, not a senior devotee, just a young devotee. And I haven't seen that devotee since that time, but the look on his face, the sincerity of his words touched my heart and started drawing me closer into the association of devotees. I wanted to be around that devotee who was a bhakta, new bhakta, but he had that wonderful understanding of Krishna consciousness. So as it says, this will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master. And under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. So that is the sadhana bhakti that we're talking about. The regulative practice, rising early, chanting rounds, hearing classes, taking prasadam, doing services. And of course, in the beginning, it may not be as attractive, maybe, or we don't taste it as much because as a person, compared to a person with jaundice, that particular disease, where they can't taste sweetness, but the only cure for that jaundice or the indication that one is cured is taking sweet. Because as he takes it and takes it and takes it, he begins to get his taste back. And then the sweetness manifests again. So as we practice the regulative principles under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master in the association of sincere devotees, we begin to get a taste for Krishna consciousness. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes freed from all material attachments, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about the absolute personality of Godhead. So just see how it works. We get that taste. And also in the Bhagavatam, it very nicely explains that if I can remember the Sanskrit, Shushusho Shatadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Satseva. I can't remember the last two lines, but anyway, by rendering service to those devotees who are free from all vice, one attains the affinity, the attraction for hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead by association, by rendering service to those devotees, those advanced devotees. And by that, one gets that affinity, that beginning attraction. Then, Shrimbata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Ridyan Tastos, Jivadrani, Vidunoti Suristatam. So when the Lord sees that you have developed that attraction by rendering service to the elevated devotees, when the Lord sees that you now have that interest, then he, within the heart, Ridyantasto Yabhadrani, he starts to clean the heart, or cleanses the heart of all these distractions. And then the next verse, Bhagavatam 1:2-18, Nasta Prayasta Bhadretsu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Tumasloke, Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki. So then by regular attendance in classes like the Srimad Bhagavatam, all the inauspicious things that are blocking our spiritual advancement, that ultimately block us from appreciating Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, those things are gradually destroyed, as the Bhagavatam says, to nil. Nil means practically you cannot even notice it. But that takes time. So in the beginning, the regulative process is extremely important. We should not neglect it, but we should also understand that beyond that, this is the stage whereby we begin to appreciate Krishna in a more deeper fashion. So Lord Chaitanya was thinking, and this is appropriate because Lord Chaitanya's appearance day is coming very soon, next month. And now is the time to begin to absorb ourselves deeper into the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why he appeared, why did he come? Of course, we know that Advaitacharya implored him, begged him, please come. I cannot do anything to save this world. So Lord Chaitanya came on the plea of his wonderful servant, Advaitacharya, but he also came to taste this nectar of devotional service in the Sankirtan movement. He wanted to taste that nectar, and also to taste the nectar that Srimati Radharani herself was experiencing. Krishna's thinking, I have everything, but I don't have that. I don't have that experience of Radharani's attraction to me. What is that feeling? I want that. I want to taste that. So in that mood, he came, a combination of Krishna and Radharani, to taste the sweetness of devotional service. That's an indication of how important devotional service is. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, Krishna himself, wanted to taste that nectar. And in the Kali Yuga, the most effective way to advance in Krishna consciousness is through the Sankirtan movement. All glories to Sri Krishna's Sankirtan. It does everything, cleanses the heart of all desires, material desires. And it's actually, it's the most amazing thing, this Sankirtan movement. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself is saying that in his Shikshastika prayers. It's a life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us, helps us to taste the nectar that we're always anxious for. People are running after enjoyment in the world, but they have no idea where to find it. Srila Prabhupada describes it as like an animal running in the desert toward a mirage. He says there's no water there. There's only the reflection of water. And he's running in the desert trying to get that mirage. And then ultimately he may die because of the heat in the desert. Same thing in the material world. We're running after sense gratification in this desert-like world. We will never achieve it because it's like a mirage. And we'll end up spiritually dying. Not necessarily physically, but spiritually dying, being devoid of all spiritual understanding, which is the worst punishment for the living being. To not have a sense of their eternal spiritual nature. It's like Srila Prabhupada constantly begs us to try to understand this point. I was listening to a lecture this morning Srila Prabhupada gave in Tokyo, And at the end of the lecture, it's very interesting what he says, so please listen. He's describing the importance of devotional service and hearing and chanting. So Prabhupada says, this is the opportunity of Krishna consciousness. Taktva sadharmam charanam bhujam hurer, bhajan apagvo ta pate tato jadi. Yatra qua vabhadram abu amushikim kovarta apto bhajatam sudharmata. That's from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17. Then the next one, tasyaiva hetu prayate kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada talabhyate dukkavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. That's 1.5.18. Now listen to what Prabhupada says here. You should read all this. Then he challenges, you don't read? This is in the first volume of Bhagavat. These things are explained, but I don't think you read all these things. Do you read? If you don't read, then you will feel restless. Quote, oh, let me go from Japan to India, from India to Japan, end quote. You are restless because you don't read. I'm laboring so hard for you, but you don't take advantage. Don't take advantage of eating and sleeping. Take advantage of these books, then your life will be successful. My duty, I have given you so valuable things, day and night, trying to convince you, each word to word. And if you don't take advantage of this, then what can I do for you? All right, and Prabhupada stops. Just imagine the emotion that Prabhupada, and I was listening to the lecture, and he was becoming very emotional. He's trying so hard, he's pushing, he's writing, he's preaching. And even Srila Prabhupada's physically gone. The work that he did will live on forever. In his books, in his recordings, in the videos, so many things. And he's constantly pushing us to not identify with this body, to realize that we're spirit soul, eternal spirit souls, and that we have a relationship with Krishna, that we're separated from because of our ignorance. That's why it says, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Janan Janan Salakaya. The spiritual master, he shines this torch light and gives us the ability to see, even though we don't want to see. Most of us are still trying to have some level of sense gratification. But then we start to make progress. And in this verse today, there's a word, that second verse, verse 16, the word feeble. Feeble. It's a word that we've all heard, but sometimes we don't think about what it really means. Feeble means more or less devoid of strength, power, energy. So knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. So we're studying, we're trying to understand. So we begin to respect and appreciate Krishna on some level of his supreme personality of Godhead. We're still not there to appreciate him as Shyam Sundar or Krishna the cowherd boy, so many things. As Rupa Goswami says, the perfection of the eyes is to see Krishna and Balaram entering the forest of Vrindavan. So we're not there yet. We see Krishna in his form, like in the deity form, dressed opulently. We do so many things to arrange for him. But in Krishna's Lila, he's just wearing a little dhoti, as Prabhupada said, a little dhoti and some flowers, and he's gone. And I heard Prabhupada say yesterday, and they have some little prasad they take with them when they go to take care of the cows. That's Krishna. That's the highest platform. Of course, Krishna with Radharani is supreme platform. But we see Krishna in an opulent way. But in Vrindavan, there's none of that. In Vaikuntha, there's that. This opulence is there. But in Krishna Loka, the highest platform is not there. Simple dhotis, simple flowers. The only attraction, the main attraction, like they say in the mundane world, main attraction. When you hear that phrase, main attraction, you know the star is coming. So the main attraction in the spiritual world is Krishna. That's it. But we know we're not there yet because we need to see other things, powerful things, beautiful things, so we can be drawn into That's why the deity is decorated, not like the Krishna in Vrindavan, but like the Narayan, very opulent. Of course, Krishna is not showing his four hands, but very opulent. And then Prabhupada said, the more you decorate the deities, the more Krishna conscious you become. But when you truly become Krishna conscious, like Sanatan Goswami, and he's worshiping Madan Mohan in Vrindavan. That's before the Madan Mohan temple is there, which you can go and see now. He was worshiping under a tree, and I'm sure he didn't have an opulent altar with gold gilded and silver and all those things. Maybe some little platform, he put the deity, and he's worshiping the deity with his heart and soul. But he doesn't have much to offer the deity. So he's making his chapati bread, and he's just patting it out and throwing it on the fire and then giving to the deity. Practically, that's how it was. And then one day the deity was thinking, come on, can you at least put some salt to do something to make it a little better? And so Sanatan Goswami saying, I have nothing. I'm poor. What can I offer? I have nothing to offer. I'm sorry. And the deity responded to him that, well, fine, he's an old man, what can he do? But ultimately, by the grace of the Lord, he finally received some support to take care of the deity nicely. But in the beginning, nothing was there. So the ultimate thing is to satisfy the Lord with our devotion. Only by our devotion will the Lord be satisfied. Everything we do has to be punctuated with devotion, Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, we won't get that ultimate benefit. So in that verse again today, the word feeble and the way it's structured, but devotion made feeble. That means the devotion weakened, devotion power taken away, strength taken away by such reverence. So you have to follow that. Devotion made feeble by this reverence, awe and reverence. It diminishes the significance, the beauty, the importance of devotion. So what does that mean? How do we get past that? So I was reading in Srimad Bhagavatam where Narada Muni and the exchange between Narada Muni and Vyasadeva, and I wanted to share that with you. I'll just take a couple of minutes and read some of it because it helps us put it into perspective. Begins with Canto 1, chapter 4, text 15, Srimad Bhagavatam. Once upon a time, he, Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge. Another point is that this point about knowledge keeps coming up. And I know sometimes we become fascinated with acquiring knowledge. And some devotees are endeavoring to really research the Vedas beyond Srila Prabhupada's books. I'm not saying it's bad, okay? And some devotees have a responsibility in terms of research to do that. But we have to be careful. As Prabhupada said, I have labored so hard, word for word, to give you these books. And then we find time to go read other things outside of Prabhupada's books. You have to be very careful with that. If that's part of your responsibility, fine. You're a scholar, you have to do that research, scientific and all this and that. But for the general devotees, especially, of course, for all devotees, Srila Prabhupada's books, and I say this with all sincerity and conviction, Srila Prabhupada's books are enough. And he said it. If you read Srimad Bhagavatam and you read Bhagavad Gita, of course, we have Nectar Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, Teachings of the Lord Chaitanya, Sri Shapanasad. If you read Prabhupada's books, that's enough to get a full education, bigger than he said, greater than the PhD, much greater, this knowledge. So, fully equipped in knowledge. He said the great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus, he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. So this is the point. The Vedas are so amazing. There's so many literatures, so many things that are there. And Vyasadeva is compiling that information for the good of all people. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini, the professor of the Samaveda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajurveda. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great-grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who was very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. As I said from the beginning, the ultimate goal of life is Krishna Prem. But Vyasadeva at this stage is thinking the ultimate goal of life in a different way, more or less. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. It's a very famous verse. Sri Sudra Dvijabandhunam. O twice-born brahmanas, still, now you have to follow. He's done all this work. Can you imagine? He's presented the Mahabharata, the 4 Vedas. Still, his mind was not satisfied. So imagine, we're going after trying to understand the Vedic literatures outside Prabhupada's books, sometimes, or we hanker for that. But Vyasadeva, who compiled them, was not satisfied at the end of the compilation, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. All these attributes, amazing. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. As mentioned before, Narada Muni reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayan Vyas on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narad, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshiped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahma the creator. So I want to jump to this last verse here. There's a couple of verses real quick. Sutta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the brahmanas, Vyasadeva. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parasara, Narada inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Sri Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I'm not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who was self-born. And then to finish it, yes. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. And then the last verse, which is really, really nice verse. Tadvag visargo janatag viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abhavjapi namanyanantasya yasho nikani chat nikitani yat Srinvanti Gayanti Brinanti Sadava. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So what I get from this is that if we're not properly situated in the proper understanding of hearing about Krishna, beginning to remember Krishna in the course of our activities, especially during the day. And the way we do that is by chanting Hare Krishna as much as possible and reading Srila Prabhupada's books and gradually developing the real sense of devotional service. Because as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, it's only by devotional service, Bhaktiya tunanyaya sakya ahamevam vidorjuna gyatum drastum chatattvena praveshtum chaparantapa. My dear Arjun, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So again, here in the purport is saying the same thing, that one cannot understand the dealings of the Lord in Vrindavan simply by executing the recreative principles mentioned in the scriptures. By following scriptural injunctions, one may enhance his appreciation for the glories of the Lord, but there's no chance for one to enter into the personal dealings for him. So this pure devotional service, Anya vilasata shunyam jnana karmana narvitam anukulyena krishnanu silanam bhakti uttama. Free of all karma, free of all gyan, all of these things are not there in pure devotional service. Bhajitam priti purvakam. Premanjana Trita Bhakti Vilochanena. So constantly, everywhere we see a confirmation, reaffirmation of the importance of purity in our devotional service. Purity is the force that pushes us forward in Krishna consciousness. So our real effort should be, how can I improve my devotional service? What can I do? I know for myself, I try as much as possible every day, not try, but I do every day, listen to Srila Prabhupada every single day, listen to him, his voice, his speaking, his preaching. Let it penetrate, go deep into my heart. And by that process, being dedicated to that process, incrementally, my appreciation for devotional service increases incrementally, daily, as it says in Bhagavatam. Nasta prayasa bhadresu, nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatu tamastoke bhakti bhavati right. Nice to keep. Regularly attending classes, hearing, all the inauspicious things become destroyed, practically to nil. Srila Prabhupada says, not immediately, but over time. So another thing I really focus on is every day trying to read one chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada the other day in a lecture was glorifying that. The devotees read an entire chapter, the Sanskrit. Of course, I read the Sanskrit, the English, and the purport. But they read an entire chapter. And Srila Prabhupada said, how long did that take? And He said it took 5 or 7 minutes. He said only 5, 7 minutes you can read one chapter of Bhagavatam. Every day, read one chapter, read one chapter. He kept emphasizing. And then gradually you'll begin to appreciate and understand. So we have this Srimad Bhagavatam, as Srila Prabhupada said, he labored so hard to present this to us, word for word, with elaborate purports to help us understand. And then the focus is always on trying to understand Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead. We cannot artificially do that. That's by the grace of the Lord. He reveals himself. He reveals the knowledge in order for us to make advancement in Krishna consciousness, but he reveals himself personally to the pure devotee who has dedicated his life or her life and soul to the service of the Lord with devotion. So the important thing to remember, the devotional service, and it's interesting in this purport, one cannot understand the dealings of the Lord in Vrindavan simply by executing the regulative principles, ritualistic regulative principles mentioned in the scriptures. By following scriptural injunctions, one may enhance his appreciation for the glories of the Lord, but there is no chance for one to enter into the personal dealings with him. Lastly, giving too much attention to understanding the exalted glories of the Lord reduces the chance of one's entering into the personal loving affairs of the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya, he says, to teach the principles of such loving dealings, and that's my main point, loving dealings. The Lord decided to appear as Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya's appearance is coming, and we need to focus on why did he come? Why did Krishna have to take that form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Why did he come? To teach the principles of such loving dealings. So we see the residents of Vrindavan, how they're not motivated by anything. Srila Prabhupada says, Srimati Radharani, she's the best servant of Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada says she doesn't want anything from Krishna, nothing. That's the highest standard. We are not on that standard. We're not meant to try to imitate Srimati Radharani. We're meant to follow in the footsteps of all the great devotees who understand the depths and appreciation for Radha and Krishna's activities. So they showed us that the service must be done with love, whatever that service is. We all have different services. We have different responsibilities, but everything should be done with love. The other night, Srila Prabhupada, as we were listening to a lecture in a group setting, he said, what is the prime symptom of love of Krishna? And everyone was kind of like, wow. So what he said was, the prime symptom that you're developing love of Krishna is that you want to talk about Krishna constantly, chant his glories constantly. So we can check ourselves. We can not criticize or try to, put devotees in different pockets, but we can understand who's making advancement by who's constantly trying to glorify the Lord. A lot of times we come together and we talk about all kinds of different things, and I'm guilty as much as anyone else. But then we catch ourselves and realize, oh my God, we're talking about the news and whatever, the Super Bowl or whatever it might be, but we're not really glorifying Krishna. But that's okay, because in the beginning, that's why the sadhana is important, to get us into the practice of hearing and chanting about Krishna. Of course, in the so-called older days, it was a little easier because we were all living in the temple, and there was a regulative program to keep us focused. Sankirtan, morning program, so many, they call it the sandwich, 2 pieces of bread and something in the middle. So this whole morning, evening program and all the activities. So it was a little easier. So now we have to make an extra effort to help each other remember Krishna. So that is the main point here. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration, but devotion made feeble, weakened by such reverence does not attract me. So we want to make sure that we're adding that element of love to our service, which will help us appreciate Krishna even more. And that is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as we prepare for his appearance on Gaur Purnima. So I'll stop there, see if we have any quick questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
clarifying this verse because it could be misunderstood and misinterpreted in so many ways.
Yes.
So devotees, you can unmute yourself if you have any question, any comments, anything you would like to clarify. You can raise your hand, or you can even type on the chat box. Wonderful verse, and I'm sure devotees might have a lot of questions, or at least I have at least one.
No, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah. So, Prabhu, first I want to share a couple of things here in this verse, like you were explaining, that why it can be misunderstood. Like you explained so well, Prabhu, that these regulative principles. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that what cannot understand simply by executing. He's not saying that we have an alternate to that.
Mm.
We have to do the regulative principles plus something else, like you explained, the loving devotional service. So sometimes devotees might misunderstand it's either or kind of situation. So thank you for clarifying that. My question would be, Prabhu, how will I know, or how fast should I walk, or how fast should I run? Sometimes that becomes a challenge, and then, like you said, some devotees I find, or some people I find, is they get too much into the history of Mahabharata, Ramayana, too many facts collection, and they will write even books on that, and then in the end, the result is like what happened to Srila Vyasdev. Not the thrill of the bhakti is not there. At the same time, I should be careful that I should not walk or run too fast.
Right.
So it's a classical question, I know, challenging question, but
no, it's a wonderful question. In other words, of course, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya upadekshanti te gyanam gyanana tattva darshana. So one should learn the truth, or try to learn the truth, by approaching a spiritual master, rendering service, inquiring. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he's seen the truth. So someone can say, well, I can't write my spiritual master. I can't call my spiritual master. What am I supposed to do? Well, and Prabhupada always said, you have your senior god brothers, senior god sisters. And I say this many times, you need to have at least a few devotees that you can reach out to before you step into the mess. So sometimes we jump too quickly and we end up in the mess, and then we look up and go, oh, how did I get here? Vyasadeva went through that whole process. I'm glad you pointed that out. And I remember the first time I experienced reading this, he went through that whole process of Mahabharata, Vedas, all of this information, breaking it up, giving it to his disciples, ensuring for the benefit of all mankind. He's sitting there going, but I'm not happy. And here we are running after those books. And he was unhappy after presenting those books. And also in the Bhagavad Gita, was it Krishna says, Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtragunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdwando Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Shema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. But see, what happens, Prabhu, well, sometimes we forget, in the heat of the moment of trying to be Krishna conscious, sometimes we forget the essence, the simple essence. Always remember Krishna, never forget. How much, what do we need to do that? Well, you follow those devotees who are practicing that. And you might say, well, I don't see any devotees doing that. You always have Srila Prabhupada. He's right there. He's in his videos. He's in his books. He's in his lectures. That's why I say I listen every day to Srila Prabhupada, every day, so I can reinforce my conviction, my realizations that I'm getting, few realizations here and there. Just like in preparing for this class this morning, I had a couple of last thoughts. I was trying to get it together. As I'm listening to the Srila Prabhupada lecture, he talked about this. I was like, Krishna, you're too much. I was just struggling, trying to find a couple of things. I wanted to pull them together. And then Prabhupada put it right there in the lecture that I listened to right before the class. That's how important it is. And I read to you what he said at the end, which he said, you're not reading these books. I'm struggling so hard. So what he's doing, he's giving importance to his literatures that he gave us to protect us. So we need to be that person for someone else, meaning that person who's dedicated, who's following, who's setting the example, because somebody else might need your association that day. And you also need someone in the same way, because you might be struggling that day. You need some examples you can look at to pull you back up. So I learned something from my band director in high school. And this is a word that you probably never heard. It's a word he called it louse. I don't even know how you spell it. Louse in his explanation meant messing up. So my band director said, before you louse something up, mess up something, thimp, T-H-I-M-P. He wrote it down on the board, the blackboard. I don't know if anyone understood it but me. I caught it. Before you make a mistake, think. Think before you leap. One time in Atlanta, Minu Purushottam, very famous Indian bhajan singer, we brought her to Atlanta for a fundraising event. And that morning, she was actually giving some little talk. So this one devotee did something just out of the ordinary. And Minu Purushottam told him, she said, Prabhu, before you do anything, Prabhupada said you should think 100 times. Before you make a mistake like that, you should think 100 times. I was so impressed with her. It was amazing. And that devotee was like really ashamed. And he was a Brahmin, second initiated devotee, but he made some mistake. So the point is, before we start on some new journey in our Krishna conscious path, before we adopt something in the process, like for instance, one time years ago, one of my temple presidents, I said, I want to just sit down and read all the English verses in the Bhagavatam, not just the English verse, so I can learn the stories. He said, Bala budget, come on, study Prabhupada's books. Study, don't just to learn some stories, study the books. Prabhupada just said, word for word I have given you, and we're just jumping ahead. And another time I had some confusion about a particular aspect of what I was doing in terms of reading the Bhagavatam. You know what I did? I called Bir Krishna Goswami, my good friend. I said, Maharaj, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And he said, well, Balabaji, like this, like that. I took his instructions. Oh, one other time, my other good friend, Hridayananda Das Goswami, I was talking about underlining as I'm studying in the books. And I didn't know if that was right or wrong. So before I got into that, I called one of my good friends, Hridayananda Das Goswami, which I do in many different circumstances, ask him, should I do that? He said, well, man, it's not so good, but with an ink. But if you're gonna do it, just use a pencil, like a little pencil. He said, because, and this was his logic, it wasn't just because of writing in the book, but he said that the logic was your realizations will improve over time. And whatever you underline in ink, you may get a greater understanding and you want to move that underline to something else. He said, just do it in pencil. But my point being there, I didn't do it without consulting. I have my consultants. I guess that's the best way to call it. I have my consultants, my benchmarkers. I look at them and I ask them, and I've been around for quite some time, but I still reach out constantly to Vishnu Gada, Bir Krishna Goswami, just different devotees, Hridayananda Das Goswami, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Jayapataka Goswami, the list goes on and on and on. I did have Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj physically to ask many times. Of course, he's no longer with us, but I have the memory of the questions I did ask. So my main point is, have your consultants. Please don't do anything that you're not sure about in Krishna consciousness. And I'm not talking about in your job and even in your family sometimes. I'm talking about Krishna consciousness. We're staking our life, eternal life, on this process that we've entered, this movement that we've entered. And we're investing time, energy, everything into it. Why would we haphazardly go about this process? Why would we not be focused, just really, really trying to get it right? And we know we don't know. I have a quote that I personally wrote. It is very interesting. It says, you have a right to your opinion, but it doesn't mean your opinion is always right. Okay? We think all these different things, and we just get inside our own little head, and we come to a conclusion, and then we go about doing it. And then we sometimes end up in the wrong place. So that's my thought on that, Prabhu. I didn't mean to go so long, but it's a very important thing, okay?
Wow. I mean, it was so exciting, Prabhu. Like you were saying all these points, having the right consultant for the most important thing that we have got into ourselves in, and making sure we realize how important it is, and having the right people around us to support this process. And yes, definitely, Prabhu, completely agree with you. And I hope I can work towards that. Thank you so much for this wonderful answer to my question. Any other devotee has any questions, any points?
I see there's in the chat, let's see. I see one from...
Oh, yes. This is from Nitya Gopal Prabhu.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. My question is, as a follower of Rupa Nugas, what should be our mode of devotion?
Bhajitam Priti Purvakam. That is such a beautiful question. And then I think of that Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, right? 10:10, right? 10:10. One of my favorite verses. Pe sam satadayuktanam bhajatam purti purvakam yadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me in love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So what should be the mood? The mood should be love. What are the symptoms of love? Prabhupada said it. Prime symptom, you always want to glorify Krishna. Always talking. So that is how we do it. We find some way to glorify Krishna, and that will ensure that we make consistent, proper advancement. Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and I mentioned this so many times because I happened to be there to hear this in the Bhagavatam class at Krishna Balaram Temple. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining this point, and he said, you take care of the deity because you think here is Krishna, but you don't take care of the floor because you don't realize here is Krishna. And we were like stunned to hear Prabhupada say that, because everything about devotional service should be carefully done. Not just the deity worship, but we put all of our focus in the deity, and we should do wonderful deity worship. But the temple itself is the body of the Lord. Lord Balaram is serving the Lord in so many capacities there. So we should give full attention. Beyond all that, okay, that's one aspect. Beyond all that, the Supreme Lord is in our heart as a super soul. So every move we make, everything we do, we should have that consciousness of appreciation and love for Krishna. So as we do our services, that is the right mood. Loving devotional service is the proper mood. I hope that helps in your question. Is that Divya Agarwal? The hands up, you can unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribol Mataji.
I just wanted to ask you about Ramayana. Personally, I've been very attracted to Lord Ramchandra's pastime and the story of Ramayana itself.
Yes.
It's even the devotees mentioned there and their mood, and Lord Ramchandra, how he exemplified by his own, like the principles that he set out with his own example. So, and I just feel it's a lot of nectar and like many things to learn from it. So, I just wonder, how would you, if you compare Ramayana and Bhagavatam, what do you learn from each of the scriptures?
It's so interesting you asked this question. One of my services is I'm the president of an organization called the Vedic Friends Association, and it includes some Srila Prabhupada disciples and some other Vedic scholars, and it's like we have scholars from all over the world. Dhruta Karma is part of this. Sri Nandana Stephen Knapp is part of this. So many. Last night, our new board member, my godbrother, Sankirtan Das from New Vrindavan, who is a renowned storyteller, and he's written several books, was telling the pastime of the Ramayana last night. It was amazing. And I was like just drawn in because he explained it in, just like you're saying, Mataji, he explained it in such a way. We were talking about environmental issues, which was the theme of the discussion. It was a Zoom call. And he tied it in so nicely with Sita being born from the earth. It was amazing how he presented it in such a Krishna conscious way. I could send you a link. Maybe I'll send it to Prabhu. I don't have the email link. Can I just send it to Anasuya's email, or you want to put your email or send it to me, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. I will send you my email. Can I post in the chat?
I would have to go out and find a link and give it to you. So
okay.
Post your email in the chat and I'll copy that.
Yes.
And then I'll send it you can send it to the Mataji so she can hear a Srila Prabhupada disciple presenting the Ramayana in a loving, Krishna conscious, Srila Prabhupada sheltered way. Okay? Because I think, Mataji, your attraction for Ram is beautiful. Once in Atlanta, His Holiness Gopal Krishnaraj, he told me, he said, Balabhadra, you need to have something of Ram. You need to have some painting, some picture somewhere. The Hindus will be very attracted. So I put this beautiful painting of Ram, Sita, Lakshman, Hanuman in the temple, and everyone goes there and offer their obeisances. But everything should be done, Mataji, just as you're doing, asking questions. As you develop your Krishna consciousness, you ask questions like this. Hopefully I can try to help, or different devotees can help you. But the desire to appreciate Ramchandra is wonderful. Also, 9th canto, Mataji, do you have a set of the Bhagavatams, Divya?
Yes, Prabhuji.
9th canto is Srila Prabhupada's, excuse me, not Srila Prabhupada, but the Bhagavatam summary of the Ramayana is in the 9th canto. So read that as the foundation. And then when you read the Ramayana of Valmiki, well, Tulsidas like that, you'll be able to put it in perspective. Because last night, one of the questions came up was that there's so many editions of Ramayana. And Sankirtan Prabhu said there's actually 300 editions of Ramayana. And each one's a little different here and there. But if you read that 9th canto summary, then you have a foundation. So if you read another edition, I believe Purna Pragya Prabhu, I think he did a Ramayana. A couple of devotees did some Ramayana. So they're very, very nice. And even Sankirtan Prabhu did one. So no harm. It's wonderful. Ramchandra's pastimes are so beautiful, so nice, so inspiring. And we say Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Balaram and Ramchandra. So Ramchandra is so important to this movement. And Lord Ramchandra, please protect us. What is it? Krishna, 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 Hey, Krishna, 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 Hey, Krishna, 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 Rakshamam, Krishna, 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 Payamam, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam, Krishna Kesava, Krishna Kesava, Krishna Kesava, Payamam. So all blessings to you, Mother Divya. Dive deeply into the pastimes of Lord Ramchandra.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Divya Mataji, if you can in private let me know your WhatsApp or email, I can forward the link to you when Prabhuji will send to me. Also, when the talk of Ramayana came, the few facts that I recently heard about Ramayana, it was 100 crore verses that Brahma spoke to Narad Muni about Ramayana.
Wow.
And out of those, only 100 were given from Narada to Valmiki, and then Valmiki expanded on that we have in the form of 24,000 verses. So the rest of those 100 crore verses are with demigods, not meant for us right now. So it's a very, very beautiful scripture. Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone have any question? Any more questions? Any clarifications?
Are you all celebrating Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance today? I mean, I know sometimes in different zones it's different. In Atlanta, we're doing today.
Yeah, we are not doing it today in the temple. Hopefully on this Sunday we can glorify him. Yeah,
because I'm going today to the temple for that. For us in Atlanta, it's a special day because Srila Prabhupada came to Atlanta in 1975 on the appearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and did the arti personally himself to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Yeah. And we still have the painting that Prabhupada offered the arti to. And today we listened to the lecture that he gave on Vyasa Puja. So it's a very, very special day for us.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, Prabhu, it seems like there are no more questions. So with your permission, we can conclude the call today.
Okay. I think Divya put her email. Yeah, I see it. So
Yes.
I'll send it directly to her.
Yes, and you can send to me also. I can also release the nectar, Prabhu.
Okay, let me see something here. I wanted to minimize the screen a little bit. Okay, hang on. You still there?
Yes.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'm gonna paste it somewhere.
Prabhuji, actually, I'm in the group, that Atlanta Bhakti Sangha group.
Oh, okay. I thought I recognized.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Okay.
probably
So
seen me at temple many times.
yes. I see. Okay. I just
Yes.
didn't have your email right off front there. Yeah.
Then,
We
yeah.
have,
Then my
we have-
WhatsApp number should be there in the group.
Yeah, I got you. All right, so
we
I'll
have-
send it to you.
Yeah, we have Susan Mataji also, who is also interested in.
So maybe I'll just send it to you, Prabhu, and then you can, share it with some other devotees.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Susan Mataji, you can also share your contact details with me, and maybe you can just post it on the chat, or you can send it to me privately on the chat, Zoom chat.
Excellent. Yeah, it
Thank
was
you
a
so much.
beautiful presentation. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And he's such a humble, sweet devotee. The way he presents it just touches your heart,
Mm.
So thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu, for your association and blessing this morning. Thank you, all the devotees. And we will look forward to see you on Monday again for our Srimad Bhagavatam morning. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Prabhupada.
Vanchakalpatarobhyasya
Kripa sindhu evacha patitanam pavnebhyo Vaishnavya namo
Namah. His Grace Balabhadra Prabhu ki jai.
Haribol. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.